No one really knows when the message in green sidewalk chalk appeared on an unassuming street in the community of Mayland Heights, but what all residents of that neighborhood will always remember is what followed. Browning Street, Saturday. George and his wife Evelyn walked hand in hand, shuffling slowly due to their impressive ages. They were the oldest known residents in Mayland Heights, and it was not uncommon to see the couple out for a stroll every day. I happened to be walking towards them when I noticed a peculiar sight. Both seniors looked down at the ground, then up towards the house they were passing. I didn't think too much of this, and as we passed, I gave a nod and friendly smile. I slowed to a halt as soon as I passed them and looked down at the sidewalk, where I saw a peculiar message scrawled in chalk. The window! I furrowed my brow and looked up at the upstairs window, to where I saw a small boy raise one finger to his lips in a shushing motion. I was admittedly rattled by the strange sequence of events, and I kept trying to figure out the significance of the shushing. The people that lived in 187 Browning were queer folks. As far as anyone knew, the couple lived with their son and rarely left the house for anything. Well, that's incorrect. If I'm not mistaken, an old woman, possibly one of the parents' parents, lived there and looked after the child when the parents were away on business. Honestly, I still get chills thinking back on all the stories I heard growing up about all the strange events that seemed to revolve around that place. I heard from my neighbor this morning that George and Evelyn had passed peacefully in their sleep the night before. It came as not much of a shock, but the odd events that happened the day previous overshadowed the sadness. I was intrigued as I remembered one story I heard about possible occult activity, with strange rituals that coincided with mysterious deaths over the years. I decided to look deeper into this whole matter, the matter of the happenings at 187 Browning Street. I went for my daily walk earlier than usual, and when I passed the house, I once again noticed the chalk writing and looked up at the upstairs window, only to see nothing there. Mustering my courage, I took a deep breath and walked up the path towards the front door, where I knocked. There was no answer for a few minutes, and just as I gave up and turned to leave, the door opened a crack, to where a small boy stood. "You shouldn't be here," he said in a tone much too grave for someone his age to be using. I asked hesitantly, "Are your parents home?" To which he responded, "No, but my Nana is. Do you need something?" My curiosity won the internal debate on a response, and so I responded, "Yes, I need to speak with your Nana." The boy's expression remained grim and stoic, but I thought I could see a flicker of fear in his eyes before he said, "Fine, I'll get her for you." "Thank you," I said as the boy closed the door. I waited at the door for another 10 minutes before a strange woman opened the door, scowling. She was an odd sort, with jet black hair and a plain gray dress. There was something about the glint in her ice blue eyes that gave me chills. Still, despite her expression and the air about her, she addressed me in a soft, almost kind voice.
"Yes, how can I help you?"
I was taken aback by the absurdity of the situation, and found it hard to find my voice. I had to think of a reason for my being there, fast. Yes, I'm looking for the homeowners. I have some business to discuss with them." When she responded, I let out a silent sigh of relief and wiped my brow.
"Oh, Maya and Steve aren't home right now. Would you like me to tell them you stopped by, Mr.
Keats, and yes, please do. The matter I have come about isn't too urgent right now, but it may become that sooner than later. "I'll leave you my card," I said, and with that, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a business card with my info. She nodded and took the card, then smiled slightly before closing the door. I was still rattled as I continued my walk, slower than usual as my legs lacked the strength. I eventually made it to the beginning of a short fence and leaned on it. Then, as I regained my bearings, I lit a cigarette. I puffed thoughtfully as I attempted to gain the most basic comprehension of the previous events. I straightened up and continued my walk, deep in thought as I made my way home. When I arrived and unlocked the door, I heard the telephone begin to ring, and so I hastily opened the door and ran to answer it. I hung up, beginning to laugh despite the growing concern enveloping me. The conversation went something like this. "Hello?"
"Yes, is this Anson Keats?"
"Speaking?"
"Yes, this is Maya Richardson. You spoke with my mother-in-law earlier today and came calling on some business to discuss with me and my husband."
"Yes, I was trying to deepen the lie now, but it was becoming distracted by something in Maya's voice. It sounded eerily similar to the old woman's voice, It was somewhat obvious that they would sound similar, being mother and daughter and all, but I couldn't get past the fact that it really sounded like it was the old woman trying to change her voice to give the appearance of being someone else.
Hello?
Yes, sorry about that. I just wanted to let you know that it has been brought to my attention that your son may be in danger.
No, he isn't. If you ever show your face around my house again, the only danger will be your own.
She hung up, and I was left flabbergasted. I then began to laugh, the only thing I could do when left with something like this to process. My concern deepened as my laughter slowed and I began to properly process the situation. Taking a deep breath, I jumped when the phone rang again. This time, when I answered, I could hear what appeared to be a man with a harsh, raspy voice. Hello?
Yeah, this is Keith, right?
Yes, who is this?
Steve Richardson. I understand that you spoke to my family earlier today, and I want you to know that is unacceptable. Stay the hell away from my house and my family. Do you understand?
I could no longer process the situation of absurd threats and shitty acting with laughter, and I began to realize the scope of what was going on here.
Do you understand?
The voice broke my musings, and I choked out a quiet yes before slamming the phone down on the base, ending the call. After I got my bearings, I went to my computer room and tried my best to research any information I could about the Richardson family. Internet browsing yielded no real results, and then I had a stroke of genius. I grabbed the cordless phone and called up an old friend who worked in the medical community. I had a few theories based on this strange old woman and the possibilities of her acting as two different people, and being a psychologist, a possible diagnosis of multiple personality disorder was becoming less and less infeasible as I went over the events in my mind. My old friend eventually answered. Records, Keith speaking. Hey Keith, it's Anson here. I need a favor. Wow, no small talk, just getting into what you need. What happened to you? I knew that Keith was joking as he said that, as it was a usual thing we had done over the years. I fell down a well, what do you expect? Ha ha ha, alright, you twist my arm. What do you need? I need you to check the Snake Pit database for any mention of a woman with the last name, Richardson. I don't know her first name, but she has jet black hair, blue eyes, and is of the Gentile sort. Also, check for any mentions of anyone with the names Steve and Maya Richardson. Sure, just give me a second. I could hear Keith typing in the background, and then he started making a weird noise. I found one record of a former patient matching the description you gave me. Her name is Moira Richardson, 70. I felt something click inside of me as he said the name. What was her diagnosis, and when was she discharged? Here, let's see. Diagnosed with acute schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder, and she was discharged about 6 years ago. Here's an interesting tidbit. She was admitted about 9 months before her discharge, and when she was released, she had already given birth to a baby boy. Anything else? Yeah, it gets weirder. I've been looking at the notes from that admission, and it says here that when she was committed, she claimed to have been raped by Satan. I think I can dig up more on this whole case, and I can give you everything I find later tonight. Alright, that'd be great. Come on over when you feel like it, and we'll have a drink. Sure, see you later, Keith said, and then the call ended. I heard knocking at the door and went to answer it, it being Keith. I invited him in and offered him a beer, to which he shook his head. Don't you have anything stronger than that? I chuckled a bit, and nodded and went to the liquor cabinet and pulled out a bottle of scotch. I was mildly worried for Keith, as we'd had these exchanges before, and if it was disturbing, he would insist on hard liquor. Despite my worry, I was also intrigued. Based on what we knew so far, this was going to be strange, but also really cool. We sat at the kitchen table, and Keith sat his briefcase on the floor beside him and opened it, removing a few folders in a coil notebook. Over the next hour or so, Keith outlined the freakishly disturbing details in Myra Richardson's file, and once we finished, the bottle of scotch had been empty for at least 20 minutes. It turns out that she had been committed multiple times prior to the period in question, all for seemingly similar reasons. Every time she was committed before, though, she was released within a week, with no evidence that she had any sort of problems. Those types of patients, in my view at least, are the most difficult to deal with. They are so deeply mired in their delusions that they just seem normal, until shit gets bad, at least. The most damning evidence towards her mental illness was a tape-recorded session that she had with her doctor, Larry Wilkerson. Today is February 17, 2003. I am here with Myra Richardson, conducting a session in a series outlining her multiple personalities, and I believe from previous sessions that today we will reach a breakthrough. How are you feeling today, Myra?
Who the fuck is Myra? My name is Steve. What the hell am I doing here?
Sorry, Steve. I thought you were someone else.
Do I look like a woman? What are you, some Nancy boy faggot that wants to bang me?
Steve, let's try to calm down. I have no intentions of that sort. How are you feeling?
I'm doing great, Doctor. How's your wife doing?
My wife is doing just fine, Maya. I have a difficult question to ask you, and you're free not to talk if you feel that's necessary.
Why wouldn't I answer a question you ask, Doctor? Go ahead.
How has your son been doing?
Don't you dare bring my son into this. He's a good boy. He's done nothing wrong. Why are you always asking about him as if he's been accused of murdering someone?
Okay, let's move on. What has your son been telling you lately?
I told you not to bring Steve into this. I've warned you before, and since you won't listen, I'll tell you this. Fuck you, Doctor whatever your name is. You'll regret ever bringing him into this, mark my words.
I listened to the recording with the same trepidation shared by Keith. After he left, I decided to Google any information I could access about Dr. Larry Wilkerson, and came across a surprising, yet unsurprising article concerning his sudden, tragic death. He had apparently been waiting for a bus near the Richardson residence on Browning when apparently, as a car passed, many witnesses saw him step off the curb in front of a speeding car. The car hit him, the impact killing him instantly. I tried digging further into the theories surrounding his death, and that's when I came across a message board thread with the title, Death on Browning. I scanned through the various conversations, looking for commonalities, and as I looked further, my concerns escalated. As I was reading the most recent comment, I swear that all the color drained from my face. Two names stuck out to me, George and Evelyn Stockard, the most recent victims of the apparent curse surrounding the house at 187 Browning Street. As I shut down my computer, I made up my mind that I was going to get to the bottom of this debacle by going to that house and demanding answers. I didn't get much sleep that night, which was pretty well to be expected, given all the new information I was now aware of. I finally went out for my walk around 9 the next morning, slouched over, but yet walking with a purposeful stride. As I made my way towards Browning Street, I kept running over yesterday's conversation with Keith. All of this was building to a climax that I felt I couldn't handle, and I ended up stopping dead on the corner of Miles and Browning, trying my best to summon what courage I had left to continue with my quest. I finally arrived at the door of 187 Browning quite some time later. My fist felt like it was made of lead as I raised it to knock on the door. It was like watching from outside of myself as I knocked 3 times and then let my hand drop to my side. The door opened, and the voice coming from the distorted figure with jet black hair and a plain gray dress sounded like it came from an echo chamber.
Hello, Mr. Keats. We've been expecting you. Please do come in.
I remember nodding and walking inside, where I lit up a cigarette before offering the pack to Myra. She took a smoke without any hint of emotion. Normally, I would never light up a cigarette in someone else's home unless asking first, and finding the balls to ask was quite the rarity. Memories of the conversation that I had with Myra/Steve/Maya had huge gaps in between, but the best thing I can tell you is I had become completely convinced of the existence of Steve and Maya as separate people. Towards the end of the talk, the little boy came in and sat down, listening intently. At first, Myra gave him a glare, evident that she didn't want him in on the conversation, but as time passed, her look softened, and through subtle changes in expression, it became obvious that she wanted him to hear every single word. The conversation continued, and the memories have completely blurred after that point. I've tried my best to remember, and what little I can recollect is only in my dreams, which I usually wake up from in a cold sweat, trying my best to avoid screaming.
Hello, Anson. How are you doing today?
Who are you?
Mike.
Wait, don't I know you from somewhere?
I think you're mistaking me for someone else, which is fine. I have that kind of face.
Makes sense. So, what am I doing here? And why are you asking how I'm feeling?
Just checking up on you. You seem to be upset about something.
Well, I've been having this dream every night, and I just can't sleep.
I think I can help you with that, Anson. Why don't you tell me what the dream is about, and what's happening to you, and such?
Okay, it all starts off with me going for a walk. I go on this walk every day, the same route, same routine, everything literally is the same. When I pass a certain house, though, I find myself looking down at the sidewalk and always notice something written there.
What do you see?
Something written in green chalk. The window! I remember always being somehow disturbed by what's written there. The window! Every time I see it, I find myself being drawn to look at the upstairs window. When I look up, I always see a weird, solemn-looking kid staring back at me. He raises his fingers to his lips in a shushing motion, and every time that happens, I always wake up.
Can you remember anything else about the dream? Like what happens after the kid shushes you?
A few times, I think that the dream is continued, but it's also hazy. Wait, I remember now. I always feel violated after the kid shushes me, like I've done something wrong, like I'm gonna die.
Let's try and look deeper into why you feel that way.
You'll be sorry for this, I guarantee it. My son doesn't mess around when his family's threatened, and his son will be the death of you. I wish I could help you, I really do, but once my Steve gets it in his head that you are a threat, you may as well make funeral arrangements.
What are you talking about?
I tried to warn you time and time again, but since you won't listen, I can't help you, Mr. Keats. I wish you the best of luck, and if I could do anything to help you or even save you, I would.
An excerpt from the diary of Anson Keats, psychologist. This was taken from his work dealing with a patient, Moira Richardson, a woman deeply afflicted with multiple personality disorder. Anson Keats was a pioneer in devising a revolutionary treatment for people afflicted with this condition, and if we could tell you more, we would. Unfortunately, Anson Keats has been missing for the better part of 5 years, and is regrettably assumed to be deceased. This open article is dedicated to the memory of Anson Keats and all the work he has done to try and help the severely mentally ill.